it feels like that we're almost on a convergence or a new frontier where with sustainability, it's easy to look at big goals, get big wins, and I can't take credit for this thinking at all, but my former manager, Peter Smith, sort of introduced me to this line of thinking in that to look at your own personal sphere of influence. And what I mean by that is, what are the controllables that I can control, and what are the little opportunities that I can find? Because a bunch of small wins that are achievable ultimately, accumulate into the big wins. And I think we're starting to see that along the flooring industry and construction industry at large, is a bunch of small levers that we can pull that are making a real difference.
Tim Bradbury.
Hey.
Timothy James Bradbury.
Yep.
Is that your middle name?
I go by Mr. B.
Wait. Is that actually your middle name, James?
It is, yeah.
Wow. Every guy basically born around 1990, that seems to be their middle name.
I mean, I go by James, so that works too.
Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here.
Thank you for coming into work.
Thank you for pulling me away from the 50 quotes I was doing, sweating.
Hey, you're welcome. I thought it would be cool for us to just have a quick chat on, I guess, your background, also on you're passionate about sustainability.
Yes.
And yeah, like we can kind of touch on that world, how it relates to what we do in flooring. Yeah. Sound good?
Sounds wonderful. Let's dive right in. So thanks for coming.
Okay.
First of all.
You're welcome.
So background. So I, since I could remember, had a passion for architecture and design. I know you don't think I'm a creative. Kind of hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I'm a creative.
Long story, but I discovered yesterday that he isn't.
Okay. Well, that is episode 2. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
So yeah, always interested in architecture. Ended up studying through RMIT, the building design program, which was fantastic. And then worked for Sukar, a car design group, before moving to Woods Bagot to work on Cullen's Arch and a few mixed-use commercial projects, which is wonderful. And then I guess from a sustainability lens, that period in Australia was almost a box to be ticked. Wasn't really studied in university. It's an additional subject if you want it. Certainly not the integration we see today, where it's at the forefront before design.
Wait, as in when you say a box to be ticked, you mean as in like...
It's like, hey, we've got a rainwater tank.
As in people didn't really care. It was more just like, wow. Yeah,
it was a fringe almost. Like it was a fringe.
We just need to keep this like these people happy.
Yeah, and there certainly wasn't any sustainability, at least not mainstream sustainability pathway integrated into legislation, into fit outs. It was if you found a client that cared about sustainability, let's work out how we can put some sustainable things into a building, rather than this is a mandatory requirement and a set of standards you must meet.
Okay.
So I've seen that evolution, which has been really cool, before moving to a build-to-rent startup called Local, who are doing some really cool work in the build-to-rent space. Basically, they sort of develop these apartment buildings, to be rented out forever. It's like a UK, American model integrated to the Australian system.
So they basically own the building?
Yeah, instead of developing and selling apartments off the plan and then moving on to the next, they are also the operator.
Yeah.
And so the idea is rental security, long-term rental security, and to make it stack up, you essentially have to add in amenities, a lot more amenities, gyms, pools, co-working.
To justify the higher price.
And that high price justifies the hundreds of millions of dollars upfront cost, which you're not going to reap back for 30 years, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? So my role there moved through a few stages, but through a design lens into sustainability, and really looking at the buildings that we're developing, how we can make them as sustainable as possible within budget, within reason, for how much we're trying to spend on the building, and also our market. So my role was looking into different levers that we can pull to make that a reality, and making business cases around that.
Okay.
That led me through Green Star certification.
So that's where you started your journey with Green Star.
Correct. So interestingly, Green Star really took off as a optional sort of certification into now a more or less government mandated in some cases, but highly suggested pathway for new developments. And what it essentially is, if I step away, take a little side step into Green Star, is a rubric and a set of framework to output, I wouldn't say a sustainable building, but certainly more sustainable measures within that building.
Okay. And from the point of view of material selection?
Material selection, what sort of floors you've got, where the floors come from, what are the floors made of, can we recycle them, right through to, energy output. We model, before the building is developed, how much energy it's expected to use, and then you can work backwards to mitigate how we can reduce that through solar panels, solar orientation, insulation methods. So it really is like the Bible for sustainability, one of the tools that you can use. And the more points you get, so the more sustainable measures you take and quantify and verify, the better star rating you're going to get.
And so why is that important? Like why, like who places value on that is what I'm getting at.
It's a great question. I would say, like historically speaking, it would be an end user, mum and dad want to have a more sustainable home. This was coming from a developer's point of view because it justifies and it strengthens the business case for investors that you're going to be having a sustainable development.
Yeah.
So from the high level, if you think about it, they're looking at their brand and their investment, and are they a green investor because they have their own set of corporate ESG scores. So this helps that. And then from an end user point of view, it means your apartment or your home is way more comfortable. The idea that you have to use heating and cooling all year round in Melbourne is crazy. So this mitigates a lot of that. And then also knowing that the air you breathe in the building is healthier because the floors aren't giving off, toxic volatile compounds and the backing on the carpets. And that's all through a series of small decisions that have been made along the way and justified. That being said, you win some and you got to pick your battles on what is doable and what's not. There's always more that can be done. But it's a let's see as much as we can do and make that a reality.
And so with Green Star, is there any? I'm not that familiar to be honest with you. I obviously understand the basics of it, but is there any thought given to like when you're selecting material? Yes, it might be like super environmentally friendly. There's a great reuse or recycling program for that product, but like a disadvantage is potentially that the product might only last a quarter of the time of a product. Do you know what I'm getting at? Is there any, because a product like that might last a quarter of the time, that might tick every box and just be like, put this in everywhere, but then it's not sort of factoring in the life of that product. Does that make sense? So is there any thought into...
I'd say that there's more thought. I think, in my opinion, a lot of us rushed out the gate with, hey, this is sustainable. It ticks all these boxes. Great. And then there's been a lot of learning over the last 5 years of, maybe that wasn't fit for purpose. Maybe this was. I can think of a case where, a certain business rolled out cork flooring in a commercial setting that was going to be receiving high traffic. I love cork flooring, probably great in a residential setting. And
I love cork flooring too, by the way.
And
actually, the original style cork flooring.
Which is hard to find these days.
And my auntie has it in her house, and it's like basically, it's been there for, I don't know, 30 years or whatever, and it's good as new.
It's amazing how many products are sort of being brought back around from the 80s and 90s that a lot of us have forgotten how to install, how to use, and how to clean, how to, operate.
So anyway, back to...
So in that case, it was receiving high traffic. Cleaners would come in, drop buckets of water on it to wash the floor, as they typically would do for any floor. And, inevitably it bubbled up and required replacement. So it didn't seek out the life cycle that, the investment expected out of it. And I think so. Where that begins now is with the architects and education around that with the architects and interior designers. So it's suppliers getting out there ahead of the game to say, hey, this product is best for these situations.
Yeah, and I think it's all about being fit for purpose.
Exactly right.
Because if, at least for me, in my mind, if like a product, yes, it's not, it has PVC in it. And I know that's frowned upon. A lot of people frown upon that. But if it's going to last 15 years and we know it will last 15 years, you know, to me, I kind of look at that and think, well, that's probably a better choice in certain situations that are super high traffic than a product that potentially might last 2 years, 3 years.
And then you're having some tough conversations.
You know, it's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There are credits that award, you know, PVC-free products, which is, I think, where a lot of that, you know, if you're looking for quick points for a star rating, not just Green Star, but any of them, there are some boxes you can tick, and going PVC-free, I think, is something that's good, particularly in blinds. You know, PVC blinds is, I think, absolutely should be done.
As in PVC-free?
Yeah.
Okay.
Flooring, it really should be, you know, considered, you know, whether or not it's fit for purpose, or look at how you prepare the slab underneath that floor, because if you're not going a PVC backing, there can be some, you know, future problems down the track, particularly with steam cleaning.
Yes.
Yeah. And mold.
All right, so let's get back to, want to understand, so you're now working as a project manager in Premrest, our team in our install business.
Yeah.
That's like, a lot of people would look at that jump from your career sort of trajectory and what you had been doing previously. They look at that and go, that's odd.
It was an interesting LinkedIn moment. You know, you're made so aware of, you know, your own insecurities. I wonder what people think about me. You know, so it was good for that point to be made aware in myself. But I think I've taken almost a unicorn path through fortune, in that started out at, you know, consultant side, architecture, client side, you know, in the developer world, and now contractor side. Yeah. So I'm I would say very fortunate to have been able to do the loop.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because you
see all sides.
Because that often, from what I understand,
it's the other way around.
Well, it's also like there's a tension between each of those. You know, steps, or like what are they called? Yeah, well, entities, I guess.
I think you rarely ever get a peek into the other side.
Yeah,
and so it's good to be able to know, okay, what drives, you know, some of the decisions that I would pressure sensitive to me, or that we cared about, you know, on the development side. You never really think about the end goal for a contractor, and what their goals are, and what's important to them, and likewise for consultant as well. So it's been really good to see, you know, I mean, it helps me now to be able to communicate with them and understand where everyone's coming from. But it's something that I wanted to do. It's something that I thought this would really benefit me from a contractor side, and having had that experience.
Yeah.
And that perhaps I could have the most impact and get the most out of what I'm good at, being on the contractor side.
Well, I love that. So when you started, like, you had there's the one particular example I could think of, that you had these ideas of like what actually happens on the installing side of things, and the best methods to do things. Yeah. And then, you know, obviously you got down on the ground level with our contractors and understanding what's happening and getting their feedback. And the concepts and the ideas that you thought were the best methods, blah, 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 are just not like, you know, so it's funny that like sort of the top end and the bottom end both sort of talk differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think maybe if I had my time again, I would have spent the first 2 years of architecture on site. Yeah, get it from a contractor's point of view to then inform how I specified and designed. Yeah, because you just don't understand. Yeah, like we would specify carpet or vinyl, and, you know, for it to be adhesive fixed to the ground, but you're not delving into what adhesion, is the temperature too hot? Do I need air blower? All those, metrics that have real impact.
Yeah.
Particularly in a sustainability sense, have a massive difference.
Yeah. Because sometimes, there'll be a specification that comes through for a certain product that to be installed a certain way, method, and the manufacturers backed it up, blah blah blah, and it's like you look at it and you're like, what, like this is just this is not a good idea. Sense. Like, what are we doing? And it's just like, and at the end of the day, the contractor is the one that bears the responsibility for the product not sticking, or do you understand? Like, as in, so like, there's a tension there,
Yeah.
So it's hard, I think, sometimes to sort of navigate through that.
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate in that I can sort of see where the architect's intent was coming from, or the client's intent, and now we're in a position that we can communicate. Hey, have you thought about this? Rather than, I think sometimes it can just be a tension between it.
And I think that's actually been what's so good about you joining our team, in that you understand that world and the language that they talk. And because you've been there, you also do carry a little bit of some respect from their side of things. So, if we were to say, hey, we don't think X, Y, Z is the best idea because of these reasons, normally you would just be like, it feels like they would just be like, oh, you guys are just some dumb contractors. You know what I mean? Where at least now it's like, there's a bit more weight to that feedback.
And I think also from a flooring point of view, certainly in my career, it was always let's specify, this looks good, let's get it built, and you move on to the next project.
Yeah.
And we have lived in a build to sell world where everything was churn and burn. And from an office fit out point of view, you'd have longevity in mind, but not to the nth degree. Whereas I think a lot of what's being designed for the better is starting to have that conversation around longevity. And that's changing the way, not only what's being specified, but what's being put out there by manufacturers. And I think Shaw Contract introduced their new line where they'll be taking back LVT and they recycle it. And, these sort of initiatives circle around this sustainability rubrics of longevity and the awareness around that. I think it's just been so great to see.
Yeah. That's interesting. So the other week, Aaron and Colin were speaking with Bob Valletta from Interface.
Yeah.
And he touched on actually that the carpet manufacturers, at least in Australia, are now, I don't know how they're actually doing this, but they're actually now talking about how they can work together to recycle their carpet locally. Because, the main argument that is made as to why we don't have great recycling programs in Australia, like
it's a shame.
I think the US does, and potentially Europe, is because it's just not a big enough, market to sort of sustain that recycling thing. But anyway, he was talking about how they're now working together to, come up with a solution to that. So anyway, it might be interesting for us to find someone to talk to about that for future.
Yeah, if you're out there and you want to recycle, we want to partner with you to change the world.
I think you need to look down that.
Hey. If you're interested in recycling flooring product, please reach out because we are waiting for your call.
There you go. So talk to me about you are involved with ResiLoop.
Yeah.
What is ResiLoop?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of came out of nowhere and it's a really exciting initiative. So ResiLoop is essentially...
it came out of nowhere for you.
For me? No.
I was involved for quite a while.
I have a very small part to do with ResiLoop.
I've forgotten what the working group was called, but I was involved with that because
you predate myself.
Me. And then when you joined our team, it was like clear that, all right, I think you are definitely passionate about this stuff. And I like it too, obviously, but you're more passionate. So I thought, all right, I'm going to take a back seat here and let sort of you
So what you said is you took me under your wing and then
No,
you
no,
said,
no.
time to fly.
That's exactly.
Thank you.
That's exactly what
I
happened.
feel so good to spread my wings.
So I'm just providing context why it came out of nowhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So long story short, they are a body that look into the recycling of resilient flooring material, whether that be sheet vinyl or vinyl planks. And it was sort of a government-backed initiative, which is really cool to see. And what they've done is, from scratch, set up a team, drop-off and collection points among, some of Victoria's best flooring contractors, interstate as well.
Yeah.
Yep, they're expanding. Where at those contractors, if you've got leftover sheet vinyl on site, or you've got leftover LVT plank, so your hybrid planks.
As in, so fresh, like
Fresh,
new
hasn't
cut-offs.
been glued. Often, so let me step back. When we're installing floor, often there's so many cuts, and you've got half a board left, third of a board left, or a bit of off-cut vinyl. Typically speaking, that would often go to landfill.
Yeah, well, always that's. I don't know
Yeah.
where else it would go.
I've seen some very bad-looking doormats made out of sheet vinyl.
Okay.
But anyway, so they saw
Doormats. That doesn't even provide any.
it's a conversation for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, I walked out and saw it and thought, no way. Anyways, so yes, go straight to landfill. They saw an opportunity there, to their credit, that this is a recyclable material, that there's large quantities of it, and that we can connect in with these contractors to collate them, and then it gets sent to a third party who essentially recycles it, melts it down, and currently turns it into a garden edging product, which is sold at Bunnings. Wouldn't look any different to any other garden edging product, only that this is 100% recycled, which is amazing. They're also where I was fortunate enough to be an advisory panel member that looks into research and design opportunities for those products and for the scheme, and seeing live on ground and what's working, what's not.
Very cool.
Trying to come up with some good ideas.
Love that. And then, so in the flooring world, so like the commercial flooring world, that is, like where with sustainability, like what's a focus like at the moment?
Well, at the moment, that's the biggest driver in terms of live recyclable content. Secondary to that, and that has the biggest capacity scale-wise to grow, would be carpet tile. Hundreds of thousands of square metres installed in Australia alone on an annual basis, and it's
how many?
Hundreds of thousands.
Oh, hundreds. Yeah, I thought you said 100.
We're going to say,
I'm pretty sure there's more than that.
784,000.
Okay, I think there's more than that.
Yeah, there's more than that. Okay. So the current method, and you'd know more about this than me, is that if a carpet tile is recyclable, and normally it's glass back, so it's a PVC back, they shave the carpet off the top and go through a machine that essentially a conveyor belt shaves the carpet off the top, so that nylon wool fabric can be recycled and turned into something else, and then that backing is probably put into landfill.
So from my understanding, the PVC backing is can be turned back into new pellets.
There you go. I stand corrected.
I don't know that for a fact though, but I think the difficulty there is it's contaminated obviously with PS adhesive. But I think the main thing that carpet tiles are used in Australia for after the end of life is reuse.
Yes.
So in the next tier down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's
so
what I love
on
about
that,
us.
What's it called? The waste. What's it called? Waste hierarchy.
Yes.
So you got like reuse. What is it? Reduce, reuse, recycle, landfill, or thereabout.
And that rubric is sort of what we would be doing on site, and I'd hope every contractor out there, where we take back. Often you're going into a site, you're taking up what's there, we'll take it back to the warehouse, sort it out, work out if it can be reused, which is often, it's a very live market out there. People are just looking for second-hand carpet.
Yeah, carpet seems to be...
no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
It never crossed my mind that someone might thought, that's an old carpet tile.
Yeah.
I want that.
Isn't that crazy?
So,
There's places here in Melbourne that sell used kappa tiles.
Yes, and there's we would take back quite a lot.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure there are one of the manufacturers brings back kappa tiles, cleans them, and then resells them.
I love that.
I mean, I've only heard that secondhand, so I don't know if that's.
No, that's
I don't
fact.
know if that. Okay,
That's fact.
is it actually?
Yeah.
Wait, do you actually know this?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, this is great.
But I believe it to be so.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on with, the sustainability and?
Just to say that I think that it feels like that we're almost on a convergence or a new frontier where with sustainability, it's easy to look at big goals, get big wins, and I can't take credit for this thinking at all, but my former manager, Peter Smith, sort of introduced me to this line of thinking in that to look at your own personal sphere of influence. And what I mean by that is, what are the controllables that I can control, and what are the little opportunities that I can find? Because a bunch of small wins that are achievable ultimately, accumulate into the big wins. And I think we're starting to see that along the flooring industry and construction industry at large is a bunch of small levers that we can pull that are making a real difference. So I think, initiatives like ResiLoop, the reuse recycle schemes are starting to make a real big difference. Yeah. And then on top, you add that into that interface and Shore and Target, bringing out sustainable products. I think it's heading in a really exciting direction. Yeah. And it'll only get better with time to come.
Very good.